Hello, everyone. It's the thyroid question and answer I'm so excited for. I'm hoping that you all feel inspired from the time that we spend together today, or if you're watching the replay. For those of you who are unfamiliar with me, my name is Dr. Julie Tumoon. I am a naturopathic medical doctor. I have a master's in Chinese medicine. I have advanced certifications as well in functional medicine. I'm also a Qigong practitioner, and I am even now in the process of learning a whole depth of expansion in alchemy work. And my practice is focused on women who are exhausted and who want to understand how to cultivate true vitality in their bodies and want to have a loving, true relationship with their body and be able to hold that for the rest of their lives. And through the process of that connection, actually heal the things that are holding them back. And so this is my passion. It is who I am. It is how I live. And I teach from the perspective of my over 20 years in private practice and the thousands of very tough cases that have come through my doors over those years, and all that I have learned in how healing actually works. And so that's my mission. And so as you come on, I'd love it if you would pop a hello, let us know you're here. If you're going to watch the replay, definitely let us know that you're watching the replay. Much of my work, just to give you perspective, really also stems from cultivating community. I believe that women heal better in community. I believe that a lot of our wounding as women comes from our separateness in the world. Hi, Jill. And that when we are seen and held authentically in community, I believe it allows us to actually access our own inner wisdom in ways that we don't do as much on our own. And this is something that I discovered through my years in working, and the change by working in community has been phenomenal. Because there is something that happens when you can access the energy of other women who are further in their journey than you, or who might be asking questions that you didn't even know you needed to ask. And so it is a big tenet of my belief that we need to be in community, because it really does wonders for our vitality. Hello, Danny. Hello, Michelle. So that is part of my mission as well. And the women who work with me, they really get it, because our community is quite profound in its wisdom. So I did a menopausal Q&A, obviously, a few weeks ago, and I loved it. I had so much fun. So I'm hoping it was valuable to you, but really it lit me up. And so one of my principles in life is that I practice what I preach. So I weave pleasure and joy, and I work from my passion rather than something that I should do or feel obligated to do. And so this conversation is one of those, because actually, from my perspective, I find at least cellular hypofunction of thyroid response in 99% of the people I survey. This is so important. I actually believe that thyroid problems, sadly, are probably at almost 100% perfusion in our population. And we've known that this is the case for decades. People wrote about thyroid being a problem back in the 1960s. At that time, they estimated 60% of the population actually had thyroid problems, yet only probably 30% were diagnosed. And then in the time since then, they've altered the parameters of diagnosis, actually making it harder to get diagnosed. And what I've seen over my years in practice is that it is now probably 100%. So why does this matter? Well, because we are still only publicly diagnosing at about 30%. So that means 70% are going to stay undiagnosed. And much of the thyroid problem is cellular and not glandular. And that is a really important distinction, because most docs will disagree. If you go to an endo and say, do I have cellular hypothyroid? They're going to say there's no such thing. And they're going to usher you out the door and you will go unaddressed. And that is a serious problem. And so I want to touch on this topic because it really matters. Yes, JK, the community is profound in Thriving Health. And hello, Colleen. So once again, as you guys come on, give a hello, let us know you're here. It adds to the community. This is a community and you all matter equally. So let's get to the questions, because once again, I have multiple pages of questions from you all because you ask amazing questions. So really honoring that. One of the first ones was from Mandy asking, is it possible to get off like a combination of T3, T4? The answer is yes, but. So there are many cases where women who've been taking thyroid, hello Renee, hello Stephanie, women who've been taking thyroid can heal the pattern. This is the key. So you can't have the expectation that you're going to replace taking prescription thyroid with something else. I don't actually encourage that, to think from that perspective, because that is not a healing action, that is a replacing action. And I actually find that for many women actually isn't sufficient anyway. However, there are patterns to why we have the need for thyroid hormone. And usually those patterns are because we had there's a couple options. Number one is you may actually have familial behavior patterns that have contributed to the incidence of thyroid hypofunction, either at the cell or at the gland. By that, I mean, I'm not indicating a genetic problem. I am actually indicating a lifestyle patterning, and lifestyle meaning both habits, what we eat, do, how we sleep, how we work, how intense we are, but then also emotional patterns. So thyroid has a huge connection with our emotional state. So if we tend to internalize a lot of things, like if we don't feel real comfortable with expressing, feeling, and experiencing a lot of our emotions, that tends to go here. And it also, at the cell level, it creates a contraction, and that contraction creates less, I would say, robust usage of thyroid hormone, which will lead to a stress state. So the cells like to use thyroid as their primary source of fuel. Then they use the adrenals appropriately as backup. And then if that becomes too much, we'll turn to our sympathetic nervous system. So the thyroid function at the cell is what I call peacetime function. And so to me, thyroid function is optimal when we are cultivating a sense of true ease, connection, and support in our body and in our life, which means we're focusing on what do I really need and want? What is the role of pleasure in my life? How am I cultivating joy? How am I also cultivating strength and chi in my organs? For thyroid to balance, we also need robust spleen health and liver health. Now, Western medicine isn't going to talk about the spleen. Chinese medicine, however, gives great credence to the spleen for very good reason, because energetically and functionally, it is an organ that is all about how you are able to assimilate the world and how you are able to access and grab the chi from what you eat. So if your spleen is weak, which many people have weak spleens, then your body will not have as much capacity to access the amazing wisdom and vital chi in what you eat. And so that over time then diminishes veracity of energy and balance, and especially hormonal balance in the body. And the longer that our spleen chi is weakened by probably states of overthinking, overworking, then the liver takes over, and the liver gets kind of geared up because your liver is an organ of doing. And then the liver constraint leads to decrease in the capacity of the body to do proper conversion of thyroid hormones. And you might end up with T4 that can't be converted to T3. You might end up with problems putting it to use because your cell capacity is diminished, and or toxicity cultivates. As you may have heard me say before, I am not then calling for detox, because that is actually contrary to increasing the functional capacity of the body. Detox is often harsh and circumvents body intelligence, but we do need to address the patterns. So familially, like in my family, that I can see historically, there's a long history of thyroid hypofunction. When I was a kid, I had horrific leg cramps at night. That was a thyroid hypofunction symptom. When I was a kid, I was diagnosed with, when I was a teen, I was diagnosed with PCOS. That was a thyroid hypofunction symptom. And I've seen, kind of demonstration of that throughout my life. I've never been classically hypo. However, I've been drastically cellularly hypo. And in order to repair that, I had to work with the cell and with my body to repair the stress patterns that predicated that, but I also really had to work with my energetic and emotional state and my propensity to drive and push all the time. I have a water-based constitution. I love intensity. So I have a natural inclination to really enjoy that, but I had to learn to do the balance of also my love of stillness and the fact that my biggest creative boosts come from stillness. And because of that, there have been times where I have used thyroid hormone as an example, using me as an example, but I actually don't need thyroid hormone any longer. And part of that comes from improving the cell's capacity to live in that peacetime state. So the more that we cultivate that, and if we build liver and spleen, chi, again, not talking, detox, and we build back resilience in the body, and we improve cell energy, and we put the cell in a state where she trusts us, and she also knows that we've got her back, then yes, it is possible to step off of thyroid hormone and actually be able to have cells that feel vital without it. Hopefully that answers it for you, Mandy. Moralia, beautiful name, asks us similar. I have hypothyroid. I'm taking 90 milligrams of thyroid per day. Do I have to take it forever? That would depend on what repair work was done. So there's a lot of repair work that has to be done. The longer we've taken thyroid 2, that establishes another whole challenge in that thyroid hormone will downregulate your own production. So it is kind of a catch-22. So you have to do a lot of unwinding work is what I call it. This is where I would use probably homeopathic drainage, maybe organotherapy, so homeopathics as well. We also need to help soothe those organs that are so involved in that stress state. And we have to address those background patterns that relate to the energetics and emotions. So it's that's why my answer is this: yes, you could get off of it, but there's has to be pieces in play and there has to be work done. So it's not something I never, ever, ever recommend that someone just step off their thyroid hormone, and would never clinically recommend that. That being said, I do have clients who at some point in their life chose to do that and they have their own experiences with it, but it is not advisable clinically to just step off thyroid hormone unless you have done the work to build that resilience back into the body. So that would be really important, and that is work I do. And I have clients who wanted to step off their thyroid hormone, so we did homeopathic drainage and we improved the emotional capacity and we shifted how the body was being fed. So we worked towards constitutional food patterns, which makes a huge difference. And we put in the mineral support that the body had been lacking because we could see it in the stress patterns when we evaluated. And because of that, they were able to step off of thyroid hormone and be perfectly fine. Their values are great. Their body is great. Their health is amazing. But we did the pre-work to get to that point. So that's the one thing that I would really stress. Also, so Kathleen was asking about a family member with thyroid cancer, and the thyroid was then removed, and what are the complications? So this is a big one. And the one thing I want to say first is when they remove a glandular organ like the thyroid, it is like a sledgehammer to the body. The impact is massive. And the problem is this: the gland may have been removed, but the pattern was never addressed. This is significant. Thyroid cancer, all cancers, but thyroid cancer in particular, is the outcome of there having been chronic inflammatory processes and likely maybe infections and or toxicity that had lodged itself in the gland that went unaddressed, and the body in essence tried to resolve it by creating sort of a condensing around it, bringing that into creating a mass. And the body was trying to heal something, but that's not how the world looks at cancer. So the body was trying to heal something. It never had sufficient energy, resources, or help to do so. And so it kind of fulminated until it got more aggressive and then, became known. And then the solution is to, remove the gland, remove the source of the tumor. However, there was a pattern that predicated that. that likely went with things like chronic stress state, unfelt emotions, chronic biological stress, perhaps toxicity, probably limited function at, or limiting function was limited at certain organ systems. And the end result was that thyroid dysfunction. They removed the gland, but the dysfunction was not addressed. And so in this case, I always then go and do the actual repair work that should have been done a long time ago, so that the body gets cleared of the pattern. Because if the pattern is not addressed, and I see with a lot of thyroid cancer, there's also autoimmune disease, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed. If you don't address those patterns, they will present themselves someplace else. And that is the biggest thing that I just cannot stand about the way that medicine works, is that they refuse to acknowledge that that's the case. They treat it and discuss it as if it was an isolated incident, and it's actually a full body pattern. And so that needs to be addressed. I will tell you that I have a client that's been a client of mine. Oh my goodness. I'm going to say, good gracious, probably since 2010, maybe even earlier. And she has, there were nodules detected on her thyroid. They have never grown. They have gone completely into remission. They've even receded, and she's never had to have surgery, although people have pushed for it numerous times. But because of the work we did, her body is totally self-regulating, taking care of it. She is vital, vibrant. She's had 3 kids since the time I've known her. She is active, athletic, super healthy, and we did all these kinds of things that I'm talking about. And so the sad part is that she, other people don't get their patterns addressed, but she did. Mind you, she also sees like a guy who's considered like a major thyroid MD in my area, and yet even he was like pushing for removal of that thyroid, and she was like, heck no, Dr. Julie says I don't need to do that. And she's maintained that for obviously more than a decade at this point. So there are options, but it has to be pattern-based work, and that is really key. And by pattern, I mean each of us, everything we experience in our body has a pattern. So that is going to be an organ-based pattern, an energetics-based pattern. It'll tie in emotion, and then it'll have cellular and biological implications. So it is not something like, I know some of you are probably thinking like, God, I'm waiting for her to tell me exactly how to do this. I can give pieces here, but the truth is that the pattern differentiation is so important. There is not like everyone with thyroid definitely takes this, or this. There's nuances to that, but with something, especially if we're talking about the after effects of thyroid cancer, it's so important. I have a client who is doing so well, who had her thyroid removed, was not doing well before we met and worked together. She was seriously like so sick. I almost can really, in fact, I did say the first time I spoke to her, I can't take you on. She was really persistent. So I did. And she's really thriving now. But even her ND admits, like, I did not know how to do what Dr. Julie did. Like, her ND is really good, but she admits, like, I didn't know that. I didn't understand it. And so we had to reverse the patterns that had not been done. In all the years she'd been working with numerous NDs and specialists, they didn't understand that part, and that's why she was still sick. So it is complex, but it is doable. Emily's asking, like, what questions should I be asking myself that my body's still expressing Hashimoto's? So the thing about Hashimoto's is that it is, on the physical side, it is the downstream of internalized chronic stress on the physical level. I find a lot of women with Hashimoto's are high achievers. They are really wicked smart. They have incredible fortitude. They can do almost anything. And I love that. But it often comes at a cost, because a lot of times we adopted that capacity and negated what we needed along the way. And so if you notice, we live in a society that will herald you and just proclaim your brilliance for pushing through almost anything. We love it if you can achieve even more. So if you can get all A's and be on the sports team and be in the band and do all the things when you're younger, that is praised. But we never start teaching young women to ask themselves, What do I really want? What lights me up? What brings me pleasure? What is truly in my zone of genius? What do I really want to experience in this world? And so as a consequence of that, we often become sort of very push achievement based. And this is great, except that we all need balance, and we all need to bring that balance into our life, and no one teaches us to do it. And so we start sacrificing ourselves. And I feel like for women, the real pivotal point comes usually either around the time that you finish college and then start to move into a profession, or if you go to grad school. That's like for a lot of women, grad school is a big kicker, or when we start having kids, because then we're trying to be superwoman and we're trying to balance all the things. And a lot of that comes with a lot of self-abandonment. And this is what really comes up. Sorry, my eye is itching all of a sudden. So self-abandonment is a big theme with Hashimoto's. It is this denial of desire, denial of our voice, denial of the pace that we would actually like to embody. So that's another key one. You know, I can't tell you the number of times when I've been working with clients, they really start to realize that they've never honored like any of their internal rhythms. They just always assumed that their body should push, and why won't it, and what's wrong with it, and good gosh, I'm a failure if I can't do a 16-hour day and do all the things and have fun on the weekend and this is where we really compromise our body, because we are a part of nature. Like, we work on nature's rhythms, and if you notice, nature takes a lot of rests, but we don't. So with autoimmune, when we start pondering, what do I need to ask my body? You need to start asking, like, what do you need me to know? Why is this pattern physical or emotional? It's usually both, but you can ask your body, and like, then start asking it, can you show me what keeps this lodged here? Can you show me what I'm not seeing? Show me where this relates to. Show me what emotions are coming up. And then we have to do the work of really feeling the emotions. So not thinking about them, but actually feeling them, so that we can start to liberate that. A lot of times emotions and toxicity, they'll coalesce actually in your body. So I find that this is something where you can have pockets of toxicity, and this is why I'm not a big fan of detox, because it actually is like in cohort with past events, frustration, anger, griefs, sadness, resentment. And so you can't get that Mercury to move because it's bound to the resentment that kind of came in around the same time. And so for autoimmune, we need to really start paying attention to, where am I allowing myself to fully express myself? Where am I denying my desires? How could I start to shift that? What role is pleasure playing? Where am I saying yes when I mean no? Where am I saying no when I mean yes? How is my connection to all kinds of pleasure? So like the simple life pleasures of movement and nature and time with friends and rest, but also like orgasm and expressing your sexuality, and really like allowing that, because there's a whole lot of medicine and there's a huge connection between our uterus, our ovaries, our orgasm, and our thyroid. So that's another one that is important to open up and really start to play with and work with, and start to use that as the guiding principle of your life. So if we're leading first with what really is good for me here, what is my soul's desire? So note, I'm talking about a level of self-interest that is not just, if you're stuck in resentment, the problem here is that your brain might be like, well, I don't want to work at all. I just want to be able to not do anything. The truth is, I've never met anyone that was really their soul's desire. Like, it's the desire of an exhausted human, but I find that the soul is often like, oh my gosh, I want to express this genius that I have, or this caring heart, or I want to serve in these ways. And we've been doing that. That's impossible. I can't make money doing that. So we start sort of denying ourselves when there may have been a way to play with that, but we wouldn't even consider it, because in our world, we don't list those as options. Like, that's not the way society works. So that would be the big thing that I would dive deeper into, Emily. So Angela's asking, she says she's 35, dealing with infertility, low TSH, high blood pressure, history of ovarian cyst, history of weight gain. TSH is 0.1 with a normal T4. wants to know the impacts, heart, fertility, what can I do? What are Western medicine going to do? So this is a big case. I'm just going to first put that out there. Like, what I see in that small bit of information already is, I can see via the low TSH and normal T4 that your TSH is probably suppressed because you are chronically overstressed, likely overcommitted, pushing very hard. Infertility is another one that cues me into that. A lot of times with infertility with women, we're in a battle in our body. A battle of, I am either in some form in achievement mode, and I've actually even seen this in women who stay home. So mind you, it's not always like I'm in a high-powered career. It's an internal achievement mode. It's leaning into perfectionism sometimes. Sometimes it's the sacrifice of self for others. Sometimes there's some things tied up there, and like my worthiness is in what I can provide to the world, or how I can prove I'm of service, or how people need me. I don't know you, so I don't know if that's wound up in here. I'm just like giving what I've seen. Infertility also from a Chinese medicine perspective is likely pointing to liver constraint, blood stasis, blood deficiency. It also leads me to wonder what your cell stress state is, how well your cells can use nutrients. And I would also be curious what your relationship to pleasure is. Like, is like your relationship to sex one of like, hell yes, it is like deeply pleasurable for me, or it's like obligation, I have to do it, or is there anything tied up in there? That would be also important. The TSH will drop under extreme stress. This is something I don't even know if most endos realize, that the higher your stress hormones, the lower your TSH can be. So sometimes doctors are going, oh my God, you're at the edge of being hyperthyroid. And like, they're so wrong because they're not assessing the whole picture. They're not seeing the fact that this person has extraordinarily high stress. Now, mind you, I'm also not a fan of cortisol tests. Some of you are going to be like, what? Everybody's cortisol rhythm is out of whack. It is never the adrenals either. Mind you, they're just doing their job like perfectly. So we need to stop chasing down the adrenals because it's not the root of the problem. But we do need to look at how you tend to internalize stress, what the stress state of your cells is, how well your cells are using nutrients, what is the state of your copper. So copper tends to accumulate in the tissues. It acts like an estrogen, is a huge fertility deterrent. That is a downstream of living in chronic stress. So that's going to need to be cleared. That also requires working with the liver, but not detox, because detox is going to stress the pattern. You don't have the capacity at the cell to do detox. You need good thyroid function to do good detox. But it all leads me to that. The blood pressure also is cueing into the whole idea of liver constraint and maybe blood stasis. So what is a Western doc going to do? Honestly, nothing. Like, I hate to say that, but they won't know what the hell to do with you. Like, they're gonna throw you on prescriptions for sure. They're probably going to suggest that you need fertility care, which is only going to clog your liver more. So probably nothing. What is an ND? Because you said, like, I think you said in your note, like, I just found an ND will take my insurance. What do I have them do? I don't know how they practice. So this is really hard for me because most NDs don't work from cell patterns, and they don't work from constitution, and they don't work from energetics, and they don't include emotional work. So I'm not sure what to have you ask them for. I mean, I'm pretty sure they'll go around the standard panels like TSH and antibodies and T3, T4, free T3. But I don't know, because I don't know who they are. I mean, I have a lot of clients whose NDs are saying, like, just keep doing what she says, because I don't know what to tell you. In this situation, I would want to assess your cells, your organ patterns, your constitutional patterns, Chinese medicine-wise, and I'd want to do some, like, I'd have to assess whether I'd want to take the path of, like, drainage or Chinese herbs, but there's a lot of cleanup work that sounds like needs to be done in your body to really create harmony again and have your cells feel capable of using your hormones, which is what will spark all that delicious, like, fertility and such. You know, I have I have had a couple clients have babies after working with me. Some of them were surprise babies, but it's because like when we harmonize the cell and we get the body back to balance, like fertility happens. So, you know, it was a surprise for one of my clients because she was in her 40s and her kids were all like high school, but she, you know, welcomed that baby. And then I've had other clients have easy pregnancies and other clients get pregnant who'd had multiple miscarriages, because when we bring this in balance, then we actually get access to the full veracity of our body. So I would at minimum think that the ND needs to run, you know, basic thyroid panel and assess as well as they can. You know, I mean, they could run, I don't even run, so you guys need to know, I don't run most labs. I find the information ultimately useless, because if we work from constitution, I don't need to know what your cortisol levels are. I rarely am going to check like liver function. I mean, occasionally I will, but it's not that. We're working on the alchemical side of change, which is very different. Jessica was asking, parathyroid. Oh, this one. I was so excited to talk about this. Okay. So parathyroid is a key gland, but she's right, because she was expressing the frustration, like doctors don't look at it, and she suffered for a long time. But the parathyroid dysfunction is the downstream of extraordinary internalized chronic stress. So the body goes through where it starts functioning truly deeply just in survival mode. This triggers an imbalance in the use of mineral metabolism in the body, which actually pings and overtaxes the parathyroid, and then the parathyroid goes nuts, and people end up down that whole path, which is not fun, and I'm so sorry you went through that. But it was the reason why it got missed for so long is because you're not going to see the precursors of that extreme stress response on your normal CBC, you know, metabolic panel. So they just kept testing. It all looked normal. Maybe your calcium was ratcheting up a little. That might have been the only key thing. But really, you can tell the state that someone's in if you actually spend enough time with them to properly assess them, and you look at the cell. Like, I use my Chinese medicine background. I do use hair analysis, but I have a very different way of reading it. I've had people come to me with theirs and I'm like, who read this? Because they didn't get it at all. They missed all the cues. They treated stuff that didn't need to be treated, and they ignored stuff that needed to be treated. So it is so important that that gets dealt with, because that's what threw it all off. Usually that is the downstream too of the chronic stress response is altered. The use of calcium and magnesium in the body. Calcium starts depositing into the tissues. That creates a calcium stress in the body, because now the body thinks it's deficient in calcium because it can't find it because it's sitting in the tissues. And that triggers a whole cascade, since the parathyroid hormones are so involved in calcium metabolism, and it just starts the cascade. But as you can see, the origin of that was extraordinary stress response and probably internalized trauma. So it has to be addressed that way. Otherwise it does get missed. And I've seen other women have that experience where it got missed. Jessica, you were also asking about the role of antibiotics, increasing depression, and the effect that that has had on your child from having antibiotics from ear infections as a kid. And so, of course, it increases, mood disorders, because most of our mood regulation is actually coming from our gut. And so re-regulating the gut, though, is a process of both diminishing, then the deregulation. The chronic infections indicated that there was probably food allergies in a child, that or chronic stress and or trauma, but usually it's food allergies. And when those go unaddressed because the gut was immature, sometimes that means we as the mom can have stress that alters our gut terrain when we're just pregnant with those little beauties. And the other thing is that sometimes organ development has developmental stages. If you guys were ever, I did a delightful free class a while ago on thyroid called From Fatigued to Fucking Brilliant. And we discussed how the neurological development in the body actually goes in stages. And so in those early years, you're developing your emotional authority at the same time as your gut associated lymphatic tissue is developing. So if we have things that interrupt that at all, and or if we as the mom had ours interrupted, then they won't have the encoding to do the full developmental process, which is why a lot of times we have to go back and do like homeopathic drainage to do developmental reconstruction with a person's tissue responses, because it didn't actually get fully developed, nor did it get fully myelinated. And so, but that also has a big association with our relationship of us to the world. So sometimes there has to be other work done as we grow and develop on the emotional side for that. But on the physical side, we actually need to give the body back the information of development. And so this is where homeopathic drainage can be really wise, because it can help re-spur the completion of the developmental cycles, which then get interrupted, especially if our kid has food allergies and then has ear infections, because we're interrupting the developmental cycle of the gut tissue. And so we have to go do that. So a lot of people think like, oh, I just need to put in probiotics. But the problem is, if you have a developmental lag in how that gut tissue has developed and all the associated structures, you just start throwing probiotics in, they actually won't be functional. So they won't have places to land. Your villi might not be deep enough. You might not have all the other, surface, like glycosaminoglycanoproteins, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it gets complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated though. So I'm not actually advocating for like a crazy complicated gut test either. I'm actually advocating for the process being assessed. And this applies to all of us, which is why I'm discussing it, even though I don't think any of you are teenagers. But it applies to all of us because these are the origins of chronic endocrine problems later. And thyroid often has a root in places where we got interrupted in our development sometime before 7 years old, because that's when the thyroid tissue is developing its all of its encoding, like the relationship to the nervous system, the brain, the signaling, all of it. So a lot of times our roots of our challenges actually lie way back there. And that's why we have to do the physical work with the emotional work, with the energetic work, because often it was an interruption. I know that was true for me. So I had the familial patterning. I come from a Irish lineage. The Irish have a lot of hypothyroid. But then I also had some trauma at like age 5. So it was right in that sweet spot of interrupting that development. And so it needed a lot of work. I had to do a lot of work to repair that. Let's see. Ruth is saying severe thyroid eye disease times 3 years. What do I do about it? So this would be something that I don't have a quick answer for you, Ruth. I think you said too, like, you're not really getting answers from doctors. It usually self-resolves. That strikes me as there's, your body hasn't received whatever piece of information she's looking for. So I'm assuming they've probably done things like steroids and such, but that just tells it to suppress the inflammation. It doesn't tell your body what she's looking for. Whenever our body creates a symptom, it is not because she's flawed. It is because she's trying to get your attention. And usually she's trying to get our attention a million different ways before she did that thing that interrupts our life. Usually she gave us her best version of warnings. And, we are trained to placate every symptom so quickly. So most healing is not like, oh, there's something pathological. In fact, I don't use that model at all, but the way I view healing is your body's asking for information she has not yet received. So if there's inflammation that is sticking, it is because there is a process there that she's trying to contain. So I would be very curious. What is she trying to contain? What pathways are dysfunctional? Like, what information pathways are dysfunctional? Where are there energetic interruptions? Is there an emotional component? What is the stress state of your cells? Can your cells even use thyroid hormone? And is there a lot of accumulated toxicity now because your cells are too tired to clear it? Which is why I don't ever advocate detox, But if you raise the cell energy and you actually repair the root problems, your cells will begin to detox on their own, and inflammation also clears. So that would be what I would say. Ruth, I work with a lot of serious challenges with people, and we have so many ways. And I have clients who have been told there was no hope, and now they're like, why did people tell me there was no hope? There was totally a way to solve this. It's just that healing is a complex art. I mean, people have to actually dedicate their lifeblood to understanding healing, because it is a language of it is like a language of creator. And it is something that, you can understand it like robotically, like this pathway, that pathway, or you can understand it from your soul. So I am still learning to do that. Like I am obsessed with healing. like I eat, live, and breathe it. It is everything to me, because to me it is like the alchemy of our becoming. And so I would say that would be the key, that we want to really look into that space of like, what is your body asking us to see, and then to give it appropriate attention. Thanks, Jen. So that would be my feedback on that. Wendy was asking about cell inflammation and thyroid, and saying, I think it was Wendy that was saying, kind of like frustrated with everybody talks about the cell. So I agree with you. I am tired of the way that the cell is spoken about in healing. And if things are still stuck, it means your body's still waiting for that piece of information. I see a lot of people talk about the cell, and they move very quickly to like, we're going to detox you, and we got to get out the candida, and we got to open up your liver, and we got to do this, and we got to do that. And it's all this like, I'm going to tell your body what to do because she is failing you. And I'm like, that's bullshit, because your body's not failing you. She's giving you the best feedback she could find. And now we need to work with the movement. Like how they always say, not Qigong, like Kung Fu people are like, the mastery of Kung Fu is like not using force. It's actually using the other person's momentum as like the force. So like you are expending very little energy. That's what healing is. It's like finding out like, where is that moving, and how do we join it and then redirect it? That's what healing is. It is not applying force. It is joining and flowing with. And so if you're still suffering, maybe it wasn't Amy, there was someone else, or Wendy, but cell inflammation is directly linked to thyroid in the facet that cells are simply finding that they're unable to clear information because they're bogged down for some reason. And everything your cell does was for a good reason. Usually your cells are bogged down because they're like, ooh, there's no energy in this system. If I don't ratchet down our intensity level or our capacity level, she's going to die. And that's sometimes the choice that we inadvertently, you guys, if we consciously knew this, none of us would choose it. But inadvertently, many of us have asked our body to push so hard that she was like, okay, we've been pushing for 10 years. Now I'm going to turn down the dial. So she's not going to have much energy. She's going to have a lot of inflammation. But the win was we kept the heart and lungs working. And a lot of my clients come to me in this state where when I assess them, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like that's the response. I've had so many people say like, oh, body, I'm so sorry. I had no idea that I was making you be pushed into the corner where you had to choose like heart and lungs work or we do that. And it makes so much sense because people start getting so frustrated. Like, why am I so inflamed? It's like, well, because she's asking us to pay attention. And instead we've been throwing prescriptions and herbs at her, hoping something sticks. And she's like tired of it. So that is so important. Roberta was asking how to treat without worsening a rapid pulse. Oh, I loved this. Okay. Yes. Okay. If you have a rapid pulse, then that tells me that your body's existing in your sympathetic nervous system is running the show. So that means that your sympathetic nervous system is like, the other pathways have been exhausted. So thyroid pathway is like, oh, I'm tired. Adrenal pathway is like, I'm so tired. So your body's like, we have to keep her upright. She keeps getting up every day. Like seems to have this job she's got to do, or kids she's got to take care of, or a dog she's got to tend to, the house. And so your body's like, oh my goodness. Okay, well, we're going to use the hormones of the sympathetic nervous system to keep her going. That pushes the pulse up. The pulse stays high because you don't have a backup. The risk is that the pulse stays high until it crashes. We don't want that. We don't want to do that. So yes, when you have a thyroid issue and your pulse is high, and then we're in a problem, because yes, sometimes like someone will want to give you thyroid hormone and it like raises the pulse even more, because they don't understand that you actually can't sometimes use thyroid hormone until you've brought that chronic stress state down by making the body feel safe, by tending to the cell needs, by learning to listen to the language, and by addressing all the effects that that chronic stress has done. Then the body can use it. There are also cell patterns where if you're in a fast oxidation state, using thyroid can be a really challenging proposition. So that just shows that we need to address other things so that your body can get out of that drive state, so both can exist at the same time. You can be hypothyroid and you can have an exaggerated stress state on top. You cannot reach the hypothyroid state until you address the exaggerated stress state on top. And just to touch on, because I know people hear stress and they're like, I'm not stressed, or like, I do meditate, or I took a breath work class, or, those are great tools, but managing or needing stress in our body is something actually much more dynamic than that, because it's knowing how to use those tools. Like, those tools may not be the tools that your body actually likes. I have clients all the time where we use a tool for a little while and then their body starts going, and it's like, oh, that's so good. Okay, stop. Whereas they've been told in the past, like, no, don't stop. That's a perfect tool for you. It's like, yeah, it was the perfect tool for me, but now my body has changed her perspective and she wants me to do this instead. And that's that cultivated wisdom, which is also why there's no one treatment plan for thyroid. Because I know people want that. Like, just tell me the 5 supplements that fix thyroid. It's like, well, that would depend on your patterns, and that would depend on how your body processes information. And then it should change. Like, your body should actually dynamically shift over time. And so it is so key that that root gets addressed to drop the pulse, Roberta, so that you actually can get the treatment for the thyroid problem to work. You also mentioned like how to treat temperature intolerance, which is a whole other subset of this whole, your body can't self-regulate at the cell anymore, which the high pulse is showing us, because she's like if your body, if your cells could like make a face, they'd be like right now, because that's what the high pulse is. That's how I always imagine it in my head. Like, body's just like, here we go. Okay. And so it's like, and you can imagine, like, if you were in that state and I was like, okay, I need you to think peaceful thoughts, you'd be like, I can't. And it's like, you're right. You can't. We need to help you shift the state so that we can put that in. And that's that. From that state, you aren't able to reach adaptive states. So temperature variations are going to be very hard on you. So it's just that call. And I've had lots of clients be so surprised, like, oh my God, I'm handling the temperatures like totally fine. The cold intolerance is because there's probably a lot of stasis from the chronic stress response, and now your body can't circulate blood and chi to your extremities. So as a consequence, like, the cold is like extraordinarily miserable, because you can actually have cells that are very cold, but the pulse rate is really high, and it's like a separation thing almost happening. But the cells don't have flexibility. Their capacity is so narrow that like you can't flex. Whereas what we really want is for you to have such wide capacity that you encounter stress and it's like, okay. Like, it's like you're bamboo now. You're like flexible. I can bend with it. I'm not rigid. I'm not brittle. But the longer this goes, the more brittle we get. Yeah, John, totally. People don't know they're so stressed because they're so used to having so much stress. It's like so adaptively normal. You guys, when I was at my most stressed, the irony was that I was a practicing doc then too. And my clients were like, you're never stressed. You're always so peaceful. And I'm like, no, I am really adapted to stress. So you think I'm serene when I'm internally, my cells are like, so it was like the biggest irony. But I've seen that in hundreds of women where they're like, but everyone says I'm so calm. I'm like, I know, look how much you've adapted to being insanely stressed and to your body just not having capacity. So do not fall for the mistaken impression that it's like, but I'm always so calm. It's like, yeah, because you've adapted hardcore. So it's a problem. We need to help you solve that so you can actually have true. Because I will tell you that when I started treating the patterns for me many, many years ago, my first response was extraordinary exhaustion. Like I was so tired. I was texting my husband, like, can you come move my arms? Because I'd been running on stress hormones so long that when I finally started to diminish them, I was like exhausted. And it showed me that was the actual state of my body. But I was pushing so hard with stress hormones, I thought I was much more vital than I was. And so I had to go through that in order to come out of it and really learn my body's cues, because I had been totally avoiding them 100%. I'd been avoiding them and I didn't know her language at all. And I was so cut off from it. The difference is like I can feel so much and I know how to be responsive. So I have this great capacity and I'm really flexible. And that's one of the things, that's one of my favorite parts when my clients start messaging me, how they are noticing their capacity, they're working with it, they understand the signals from their body. Like my goal is that my clients start to completely lead themselves. And so that's the messages. Like I got like 5 or 6 of those this week from people like, oh my God, I'm leading myself. That's the magic, because that's when you won't slip back into the pattern, because you're actually in concert with your body, and that your cells love that. Like they're like, oh, she's home. This is so great. We're in partnership. Glow was asking, my tests are normal, but I'm exhausted. That's because there really aren't incredible tests for exhaustion in the conventional medical world. And so they'll just keep, you know what the sad part is, they'll keep testing you until they get till like you're so exhausted that your body produces frank illness that they can identify. And I hate to say it, but I feel like doctors are excited when that happens. Like over the years, I've had people go to their doc and their doc's like, I don't know, we'll just have to wait till it shows something serious. Like, wait, what? That's your treatment plan? We're going to wait till this becomes like cancer or MS, and then you're going to be excited because you have something to treat. No, I want to treat it when I'm here, not when I'm pathological. And so the exhaustion is always your body's cue. Look, I'm not keeping up. I don't have capacity. Please come meet me in this space. Let's do this together. Learn my language. Because the exhaustion is one of her primary cues that she needs that attention. She's giving you the warning flag. So my advice to you would be, reach out to me. Let's actually assess that, because there's something happening there and your body's asking us to notice before she has to create a more serious way to get your attention. Oh, Belinda, you said your doctor says you're normal, but 5 years ago, your endo diagnosed you with Hashi's. Like, is it possible that it's normal? Okay. Is it possible that you went into remission? It is. I'm totally going to give credence to that. It is possible. However, I can't tell you the number of times I've had someone's doc say that. And I'm like, okay, send me your lab results. And they send me the lab results. And I'm like, your antibodies are 500. Your doc is an idiot. Sorry. So more needs to be looked at to be sure, because I don't want you mistakenly walking through the world thinking like, oh, the Hashimotos is dealt with, because Hashi's is significant and it is not properly assessed. Like, I don't know if your doc ran your antibodies. I've had primary care docs just run a TSH and then tell the person they don't have Hashimotos anymore. What? But also the fact that thyroid meds don't treat Hashimotos. So that also concerns me with so many people, because docs are like, no, we treated it. We put you on Synthroid. That's not a treatment for Hashimoto's. Like, what are you doing? What? And it's not any better if they put you on Armour. Just going to pop it in here so someone doesn't make that as their comment. Hashimoto's is a complex whole body illness that is a downstream of these chronic stress states we've been talking about. It requires attention to why your body has created that pattern, and thyroid meds do nothing to do that. So sadly, the inflammation can grow, and Hashimoto's can literally attack any organ system in the body. So it is imperative that the work is done to address what generated that chaos. I consider it a chaos pattern in our body, because if it isn't addressed and it just goes kind of like weekly looked at, I believe that this is why we have a lot of women who end up with later life serious health conditions, and we want to avoid that because it can be avoided. That's what makes me so sad, is it can be avoided. And even a lot of endos just treat Hashis by like giving thyroid hormones. Sometimes they're using, you know, things like naltrexone or something, but it's insufficient care in my book. That is not okay. So we need to do much more. We need to do better. As a society, we need to do better. So Jessica's asking, like, so thyroid meds keep you dependent on them, how to approach and measure thyroid, how to restore, how is the liver involved? Like 100%, if we can do it, like I was talking at the beginning, if we can treat without using thyroid meds, I love it. I always tell women, if they come to me, I'm like, ooh, you're severely hypothyroid, but we, from a cell perspective, I'm going to make that as a caveat, but we can actually do a lot of restoration, and potentially they don't ever have to go on meds, because it is, I love it if people don't have to. How is the liver involved? It's involved massively. I mean, from the energetic side, the liver tends to be the organ where you just go into drive and push mode. And in that state, the liver gets really constrained, and it kind of circumvents the wisdom of the heart. And that's a challenge, because then when we can't access desire, passion, joy, we move right back into performance and basing our worthiness off of how much we've done, or how much we've achieved, or how much we've served. For women, it often turns into how much have I overgiven to the world? And we cut ourselves off from that receiving energy, and then that makes constriction in our body, and then that diminishes our capacity, and it also makes our cells feel really abandoned, because our cells are actually attuned to that energetic field of our heart, which is the energetic field of our desire and our passion and our purpose and our centeredness in our body. And so the liver is beautiful. The liver's amazing, but we don't want the liver in charge of our passions, because the liver thinks in terms of tasks. And so it's like, no, I don't want you deciding what we do next. Now, the more constrained the liver gets, the less the liver is able to conjugate hormones, which is going to diminish your conversion of thyroid hormones, including like your storage of glycogen, which is going to affect your stress capacity and all kinds of other things. But it also has to do with your detox capacity. Can you eliminate waste? Are you producing bile? And those things are going to affect your gut microbiome and the balance of those systems. So as you see, like all of a sudden it's like this puzzle that's all tied together. And so that's why the way I see healing, it's like a whole body event, rather than we're going to do your gut protocol, then your liver protocol, then your da-da-da protocol, and then your da-da, like it's that model keeps it all separate. And I find that the cells feel very alienated in that space. How to approach and measure thyroid. So conventional labs, you're always going to want to run, you know, TSH, T3, free T3, reverse T3, T4, free T4. So you can get that whole picture, probably antibodies too, but I always want to look at the cell picture. And so I do my full cell assessment, which I use a hair analysis. And again, like very different way of interpreting it. And then the Chinese medicine analysis I find is also really key. What time am I at, guys? I'm having fun. I'm going to do one more. Vicky asked, a friend had partially removed thyroid, but now is struggling with hormone and weight. That goes back to the conversation about thyroid cancer, because there was a pattern there that predicated the experience that led to the partial removal. And that pattern has not been addressed. And now the body's expressing that now it's actually been amplified because now we've done surgery, which is internalized as another stress. And so the body's showing that she's like, look, I had a pattern here that I created a problem so you would give me attention, but the pattern never got addressed. So the things that predicated that are usually some kind of stasis. There's often also deficiency. There's cell stress patterns. The cells are not using nutrients. They're not using hormones. So this is like, I was talking about my client who had her thyroid removed, but she's thriving because we went back and treated the patterns that predated the removal, which actually happened long before I met her, but they'd never been addressed. People just kept treating the presenting symptoms, which had ranged from everything from gut pathology to parasites to heavy metals. They kept like chasing around, and I feel like that's a game of whack-a-mole because that's often what happens. People start doing that. But we ditched all of that and we went back to the basics of reinvigorating true vitality, deep connection, and that wisdom of the body. And now she's thriving, but it took kind of breaking up with a lot of things that used to be gold standards in her treatment protocol. So it is possible. And I could certainly help. So you're welcome to pass my information to her if she wants to sit down and talk with me. Just so you all know, like, I talk with everyone before they work with me for free because I take very seriously that I need to feel that hookup where I know and can see what's happening, what needs attention, what is, I always tune into spirit, like, is spirit giving me a yes or a no? But also you need to feel inspired, confident, connected, because that is essential. The work I do is not, I'm not going to run some labs, tell you to avoid 15 foods and take 10 supplements. It is an actual journey of that reclamation. So we got to walk that together. So I take it very seriously, which is why I offer those consults. You can ask anyone who's had one. I've had women be like, I got more understanding in a free 45 minutes with you than I've gotten from anyone. My doctors never asked me these questions. They never wanted to know any of this. And that's in my free consult. So can you imagine what it's like when you've got me and you're messaging me daily and you're showing up every week and getting to ask me live questions and you've got that support? It's like that times 10 million. So this is my passion and I love you all. And my intent is that you get to thrive, because truth be told, a lot of what you're going to be offered is not going to be in the orientation of your thriving. And we need strong women in the world, you guys. Like, we need them more than ever. You being weak or sick or unable to participate does not make the world a better place. And I have kids, and fuck if I don't want the best possible world for them. But to do that, I need other women in my corner who can hold and have a capacity that is expansive, because rest assured, the world's going to continue to be a bit crazy. So if we don't have capacity, we get brittle and we break. And that doesn't lead to the kind of world that I'm cultivating in my life. So I appreciate you so much for spending an hour with me on a Wednesday evening, sharing these beautiful questions. I still have another page, so I'll be doing another Q&A. I'll probably blend menopause and thyroid, because I've got another page of menopause questions and another page of thyroid questions. But I am here. I love to serve. You have access to me. You know where I'm at. Click the link if you want to schedule a call. Send me a message. But you guys, you don't have to suffer. It's enough. There are so many miracles awaiting you, and that alchemy is yours, because you are of the divine and your body is a direct portal to all the divine wisdom that the world could ever have to offer. We just need to let your cells have the capacity to experience it and hold it. I love you. Have a beautiful day. Reach out. I'm here. You can heal. I know it with every fiber of my being. Blessings, guys.